Recently, I celebrated my 40th birthday, a date I usually look forward to with great anticipation. My husband, Pedro, and I had been married for 15 years, and he always made a big deal out of my birthday. I remember the romantic dinners he organized, the carefully planned surprises, and the love he showed. This year, however, something felt different. Pedro had started participating in a local running group about 6 months ago, and since then he seemed increasingly distant. Pedro, at 42, was always the energetic and social one in our relationship. He thrived on social interactions and loved being the center of attention, which perfectly matched his career in sales. Meanwhile, I worked as a graphic designer, often putting in long hours to meet project deadlines. Our balance worked well, but in recent months, I noticed the distance between us growing. He was more absent, both physically and emotionally. On my birthday, Pedro left early for a morning run with the group. He promised he'd be back in time for a special dinner he had planned. However, when he returned, he seemed rushed and disconnected. The dinner was pleasant, but the absence of his usual enthusiasm was palpable. He was there, but his mind seemed elsewhere, and that hurt more than I cared to admit. While cutting the cake, I noticed Pedro was on his phone more than usual. When I asked about it, he quickly put the device away and said he was just responding to work messages. I wanted to believe him, but a small voice in my head kept questioning this explanation. That night, lying in bed next to him, I felt lonelier than ever. The following weeks were no different. Pedro continued spending a lot of time with the running group, and our conversations became superficial. I missed our deep discussions, shared laughs, and the connection we always had. It felt like an invisible wall had been erected between us, and I didn't know how to break it down. The fear of losing my husband began to grow, along with the need to understand what was happening. I started to observe his behavior more closely. Each day, my suspicion that something was wrong grew. The changes in Pedro were subtle but undeniable, and I knew I needed to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Little did I know that this quest would lead me to a revelation that would change my life forever. At first, I thought Pedro's new hobby was a great way for him to stay active and meet new people. He had always been passionate about sports, and running seemed a natural extension of that interest. However, as the months went by, I began to notice changes I couldn't ignore. Pedro started coming home late, often with flimsy excuses about meetings after training. He claimed he was just socializing with his running buddies, but his stories didn't seem to add up. The excuses became more elaborate and less convincing. He mentioned dinners with the running group that extended late into the night, and when I asked who was there, he was vague. I started noticing small discrepancies in his accounts, and my distrust grew. He also began dressing better, even on days when he didn't have running practice, and started using more cologne than usual. These changes made me uncomfortable, but I wanted to trust him. One night, Pedro came home with a scent of perfume I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, he brushed it off, saying it was probably from one of his running buddies. My gut told me something was wrong, but I wanted to believe him. The idea that my husband could be cheating on me was unbearable, and I fought against these thoughts, trying to justify his behavior in every way possible. Additionally, I started noticing unexplained charges on our joint credit card. There were expensive dinners and gifts I couldn't account for. When I asked Pedro about these expenses, he became defensive and claimed they were for the running group's events. Despite his explanations, the feeling that something was terribly wrong wouldn't leave me. I began to monitor his activities more closely, looking for anything that could confirm or dispel my suspicions. Even with all this evidence, I still hoped I was wrong. The idea that Pedro, the man I loved and had built a life with, could be cheating on me was devastating. I felt torn between the need to know the truth and the fear of what that truth might mean for our marriage. I decided I needed more proof before confronting him, so I continued to observe and wait, with growing anxiety. My suspicion reached its peak when, one Saturday morning, Pedro left earlier than usual for a run. I decided I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. I needed to discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I knew something was happening, and I was determined to find out what it was. The turning point came one weekend when I decided to surprise Pedro by picking him up after his run. I've always been a trusting person, but something inside me wouldn't let me rest until I knew the truth. That Saturday, I woke up early and followed Pedro to the training location. I waited in my car, watching as the runners left the building one by one. As the minutes passed, my heart beat faster. I saw Pedro's colleagues leaving, but he wasn't among them. I waited for almost an hour, anxiety growing with each passing second. Finally, I decided I couldn't just keep waiting. I gathered my courage and entered the building, my heart heavy with anticipation of what I might find. When I entered the locker room, the scene one found was devastating. There was Pedro, in a compromising position with another woman. The shock hit me like a physical blow, and for a moment I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Everything I feared was confirmed before my eyes. The woman was Anna, one of his running buddies he frequently mentioned. I felt a wave of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness. My first reaction was to confront them right there, but I held back. I left discreetly, not wanting to make a public scene. I needed to process what I had seen and decide what to do next. At that moment, all I wanted was to escape the painful reality unfolding before me. On the way home, tears streamed down my face. I was devastated, but I knew I needed to be strong. What Pedro had done not only broke the trust between us but also destroyed the life we had built together. When I got home, I sat on the couch, trying to piece together what was left of my sanity. I knew I needed to confront him, but I also needed a plan. I couldn't just let him continue lying to me. The decision to confront Pedro that night was one of the hardest I've ever made. I knew he would try to defend himself and justify his actions, but I was ready to face the truth, no matter how painful. With the evidence I had, he had no way to deny it. At that moment, I realized I was in control of the situation, and it was time for Pedro to face the consequences of his actions. That night, I waited for Pedro to come home. When he walked in, I immediately noticed the worried expression on his face. He knew something was wrong. I couldn't delay the confrontation any longer. I asked him to sit down and began speaking calmly but firmly. I told him I knew about his affair with Anna and that I had seen them together that morning. Pedro tried to deny everything, but the evidence was undeniable. I showed him the photos I had taken and mentioned the financial records showing unusual expenses. Cornered, he finally confessed. He said the affair with Anna had started a few months ago during their running sessions. He claimed she made him feel alive and appreciated, something he felt was missing in our relationship. His words cut like a knife, each sentence filled with pain and betrayal. I was devastated. We had built a life together, and it felt like everything was falling apart. The pain was deep, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I needed to make a decision about the future of our relationship. I told Pedro I needed time to think and asked him to stay with a friend for a few days. He tried to apologize, promising to end things with Anna and do everything possible to fix things between us, but I couldn't make a decision at that moment. In the days that followed, I consulted a lawyer and sought advice from close friends. The initial shock gave way to a sense of purpose. I realized that, although Pedro's actions had hurt me deeply, this was also an opportunity for personal growth and a new beginning. I decided I deserved someone who valued and respected me, and I couldn't continue in a relationship where trust had been destroyed. With the support of my friends and the lawyer, I began to map out the next steps. Separation seemed inevitable, and I knew I needed to be strong to move forward. I focused on my work and the hobbies I had neglected, seeking ways to find peace and inner strength. Therapy also became a crucial part of my healing process, helping me deal with the tumultuous emotions and rebuild my self-confidence. With time, I began to realize that, although Pedro's betrayal had been one of the most painful experiences of my life, it also gave me the opportunity to rediscover myself and grow. I reconnected with old friends, traveled, and even started exploring new opportunities. Each day was a step towards healing and renewal, and I was determined to create a better and happier life for myself. When Pedro returned home after a few days, it was clear that he was remorseful. But for me, his remorse didn't change the fact that he had betrayed me. I confronted him again, this time with more firmness. I told him that, despite his remorse, the trust between us was broken, and I couldn't continue living a lie. Pedro tried to argue, promising to change and do everything necessary to regain my trust. However, my mind was already made up. I told him I needed time and space to heal and suggested we separate temporarily to reflect on our relationship and our future. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. The days following our separation were challenging. I felt a mix of sadness, anger, and relief. I focused on taking care of myself and reflecting on what I wanted for my future. I resumed therapy sessions, which helped me understand my emotions and make more conscious decisions. Additionally, I leaned on friends and family who provided invaluable support. Over time, I began to realize that, although Pedro's betrayal had been devastating, it also gave me the opportunity to rediscover myself and grow. I reconnected with old friends, traveled, and even started exploring new opportunities. Each day was a step towards healing and renewal, and I was determined to create a better and happier life for myself. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized that the pain had been a catalyst for transformation. I had become stronger, more self-assured, and determined to find happiness on my own terms. Pedro's betrayal had been a turning point, but it didn't define me. I was ready to move forward and embrace the future with hope and confidence. The decision to separate from Pedro was one of the hardest of my life, but also one of the most liberating. After consulting with a lawyer and considering the advice of friends and family, I realized it was the best choice for my well-being. Pedro and I met to discuss the separation. It was a difficult and emotional conversation, but we both knew it was the right decision for us. Pedro acknowledged his mistakes and accepted the separation amicably. We agreed to divide our assets fairly, and he committed to helping me financially until I was back on my feet. This arrangement allowed us to avoid a long and painful legal battle. Although the sting of betrayal was still there, this decision brought a sense of relief. I could finally start planning a future without Pedro. After the separation, I threw myself into work as a way to distract myself and renew my sense of purpose. My role as a graphic designer had always been a source of pride and satisfaction. I took on more projects and explored new areas of design. Work became a way to occupy my mind and rebuild my confidence and self-esteem. Besides work, I sought out new activities and hobbies that brought me joy. I started painting again, something I had always loved but had put aside due to the demands of marriage and work. Painting became a form of therapy, allowing me to express my emotions creatively. I also began practicing yoga, which helped calm my mind and keep my body healthy. Therapy sessions continued to be crucial for my recovery. My therapist helped me explore and understand my feelings of loss and betrayal. We worked together to develop coping strategies and build a new life. Each session made me feel more in control of my emotions and my future. Therapy was an essential tool in overcoming the pain and finding a new direction. Over time, I began to see the separation not just as an end but as a new beginning. The pain of betrayal was still there, but there was now room for hope and new possibilities. I realized that although Pedro had been an important part of my life, I was strong enough to move on alone. This realization gave me the courage to explore new opportunities and build a life that was truly mine. The first steps to healing were the hardest but also the most important. Each day, I worked to find a new balance and routine. I began prioritizing my physical, mental, and emotional well-being. In addition to therapy and exercise, I started meditating regularly. Meditation helped me find inner peace and deal with stress more effectively. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in a long time. These reconnections brought a sense of normalcy and comfort. We went out to dinner, watched movies together, and talked about life. These moments of camaraderie were crucial in helping me remember that there was life outside my pain and that I was more than just my current circumstances. I also decided to take a trip I had always dreamed of. I visited a small coastal town where I spent days walking on the beach, reading, and reflecting on my life. The change of scenery was invigorating. The sea breeze and the sound of the waves brought a sense of renewal that I hadn't felt in a long time. This trip helped recharge my energy and gave me a new perspective. Upon my return, I began to consider new projects and challenges at work. Attending conferences, taking online courses, and learning new skills gave me a renewed sense of purpose and achievement. With each new skill acquired, I felt I was strengthening my identity and my career. Work was no longer just a distraction, it became a renewed passion. Healing also came through small changes in everyday life. I started cooking more, experimenting with new recipes, and enjoying the process of creating something delicious from scratch. These small daily victories helped me build a new routine that was healthy and fulfilling. I learned to appreciate the small pleasures in life, something I had previously taken for granted. As time went by, the pain of betrayal began to fade. There were still difficult moments, but they became less frequent and less intense. Each day, I felt stronger and more confident. I realized that although Pedro's betrayal had been one of the most painful experiences of my life, it also gave me the chance to rediscover myself and grow. I began to see the future with hope and determination, ready to embrace the new possibilities life had to offer. Over time, I began to rediscover who I was beyond my marriage to Pedro. Rediscovering myself was a slow and sometimes painful process, but also deeply rewarding. I revisited hobbies and interests I had abandoned. Painting became a form of therapy, a way to express my emotions that words could not capture. The colors and shapes on the canvases reflected the emotional journey I was on. Reconnecting with old friends was also a crucial part of this process. People I hadn't seen in years reappeared in my life, offering support and camaraderie. Dinners, outings, and heartfelt conversations helped me remember who I was before Pedro and all the emotional turmoil caused by the betrayal. These moments were like a balm for my wounded soul, helping me find a new sense of normalcy. Another important aspect was my physical health. I threw myself into a regimen of exercise and healthy eating. I started running, something Pedro had introduced me to, but now it was for me and my well-being. The endorphins released during exercise helped combat sadness and anxiety. Taking care of my body became a symbol of my recovery and strength. Therapy continued to be a fundamental pillar in my life. Each session was an opportunity to explore my feelings and develop strategies to deal with them. I learned to be kinder to myself, to forgive my own mistakes, and to understand that healing is a process, not a destination. My therapist helped me see that despite the pain, I had the ability to create a new life full of possibilities. As time passed, I began to feel a growing sense of peace. Small moments of joy became more frequent and more intense. I started to value the simple pleasures of life: a walk in the park, a good book, a heartfelt conversation. These moments reminded me that life is made up of small details and that happiness can be found in the simplest things. My journey of rediscovery taught me that despite adversity, I had an inner strength I had never known. This strength gave me the courage to face the future with hope and determination. I was ready to embrace new opportunities and build a life that reflected who I truly was. A year after the separation, I finally felt ready to open my heart again. I met Marcelo at a graphic design conference. He was kind, attentive, and most importantly, valued honesty and commitment. Our relationship started slowly, but I quickly realized there was a deep and genuine connection between us. Marcelo was different from Pedro in many ways, but mainly in how he treated me with respect and consideration. Our first dates were calm and pleasant. Walks in the park, home-cooked dinners, and long conversations about our lives and dreams. With Marcelo, I felt safe and appreciated in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. He knew about my past experience and was always patient and understanding, never pressuring me to do anything I wasn't ready for. Marcelo's honesty was one of the qualities that attracted me the most. Unlike Pedro, he was always transparent about his feelings and intentions. This transparency created a solid foundation of trust in our relationship. For the first time in a long time, I felt I could be completely open and vulnerable without fear of being judged or betrayed. As our relationship blossomed, I continued to work on my career. The new opportunities that arose after the separation gave me a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment. The passion for graphic design, combined with Marcelo's support, helped me reach new professional heights. I received awards, participated in international conferences, and even started teaching, sharing my passion with the next generation of designers. Over time, Marcelo and I decided to move in together. The decision was natural and easy, a progression of our love and commitment to each other. We created a home together, full of love, laughter, and understanding. Marcelo became not only my partner but also my best friend and confidant. Together, we faced life's challenges and celebrated its joys, building the life we both dreamed of. This new beginning not only brought me happiness and fulfillment, but also helped me leave behind the scars of the past. The experience with Pedro was still part of me, but it no longer defined me. I was stronger, wiser, and happier than I had ever been. I was ready for the future, knowing that, regardless of what it brought, I had the strength and support to face it. Looking back and reflecting on Pedro's betrayal and the path I had traveled since then made me realize how much I had grown and learned. One of the most important lessons was about resilience. I discovered that even in the most painful circumstances, we have the ability to get up, heal, and move on. The betrayal, though devastating, showed me my inner strength and capacity for recovery. Another valuable lesson was about self-love. I realized that to be happy in any relationship, we first need to love and value ourselves. This self-love gave me the strength to set healthy boundaries and seek relationships based on mutual respect and honesty. I learned not to accept less than I deserve and to always prioritize my emotional well-being. The experience also taught me a lot about trust and forgiveness. Trusting again after a betrayal was a challenge, but I realized that trust is an essential pillar for any healthy relationship. With Marcelo, I learned the importance of being transparent and honest and how these qualities create a solid foundation of trust. Forgiveness, both for Pedro and for myself, was a crucial step in healing. Forgiving does not mean forgetting or justifying someone's actions, but rather releasing the emotional burden and moving on. My journey also showed me the value of a strong support network. Friends, family, and professionals like my therapist played a crucial role in my recovery. They reminded me that I was not alone in that. There were people willing to support me unconditionally. This support network was a pillar of strength in the most difficult moments, and I am eternally grateful to each of them. Finally, I learned the importance of living in the present and looking to the future with hope. Although the past is part of who I am, I do not let it define my present or determine my future. Each day is a new opportunity to grow, learn, and find joy. This positive mindset helped me embrace new experiences and seek a full and happy life. These lessons not only shaped my recovery but also transformed me into a stronger and wiser person. Pedro's betrayal was a painful chapter, but it was also a catalyst for profound personal growth. Today, I am grateful for the lessons learned and for the person I have become. Despite everything that happened, Pedro and I managed to maintain a civil relationship after the separation. At first, it was hard to imagine interactions without the emotional burden of betrayal, but with time and distance, we found a way to communicate respectfully. The conversations, though rare, were always focused on practical matters, such as the division of assets and financial responsibilities. Pedro acknowledged his mistakes and, although we could never be friends again, there was a mutual understanding that civility was important. This understanding allowed us to avoid unnecessary confrontations and move on with our lives without the drama that often accompanies contentious separations. Maturity and mutual respect played a crucial role in maintaining this peace. During the first few months after the separation, we had some meetings to finalize the details of dividing our assets. These meetings, though uncomfortable, were conducted in a civilized and practical manner. We were both committed to moving forward with as little conflict as possible, and this commitment helped facilitate the process. We also decided to avoid any communication that could cause misunderstandings or revive old wounds. Our interactions were limited and always focused on specific issues. This approach helped maintain peace and avoid emotional confrontations. I learned not to expect anything from Pedro other than basic respect, and to focus on my own happiness and well-being. The civility we maintained also had a positive impact on our social circle. Mutual friends and family appreciated our ability to handle the situation in a mature and respectful manner. This helped minimize division and discomfort among our acquaintances, allowing everyone to move on without taking sides or getting involved in unnecessary conflicts. Maintaining this civility was a conscious choice that required effort from both sides, but in the end it was worth it. It allowed me to close this chapter of my life with dignity and move on without the weight of grudges or resentment. Today, I can look back and see that despite the pain, there was significant growth and renewal that prepared me for a brighter future. As time went on, the pain of Pedro's betrayal became a distant memory, something that taught me valuable lessons but no longer defined my life. Every day, I felt stronger and more confident in my path. The love and support of Marcelo, friends and family were crucial to this transformation. Together, we built a future full of possibilities and hope. Marcelo and I began planning our future together. We talked about our dreams and goals, exploring how we could support each other. We decided to travel more, to see new places and cultures. These adventures not only strengthened our relationship but also enriched our lives in ways we had never imagined. Each trip was an opportunity to grow and learn together. My career also continued to flourish. The passion for graphic design and dedication to my work led me to reach new heights. I received recognition for my projects, was invited to speak at conferences, and even started writing a book about my professional and personal journey. Work was no longer just a means of sustenance, but became an expression of who I was and what I could offer the world. Additionally, I began investing more time in charity and volunteer projects. Helping others brought me a sense of purpose and fulfillment. I worked with organizations that supported women in similar situations to mine, offering guidance and support to help them find strength and resilience in their own journeys. Seeing the positive impact I could have on other people's lives was one of the most gratifying experiences. On a personal level, Marcelo and I decided to formalize our commitment. The marriage proposal was simple and intimate, reflecting the authenticity of our relationship. The wedding was a celebration of love, honesty, and mutual commitment. Friends and family gathered to celebrate with us, and that day was one of the happiest moments of my life. We were ready to start a new chapter together, with the promise of always supporting and caring for each other. As time passed, I looked to the future with a renewed sense of hope and determination. I knew that, regardless of the challenges that arose, I had the strength and support to overcome them. Pedro's betrayal had been a painful moment, but it was also the beginning of profound and positive transformation. I learned to value my own happiness and the importance of building a life based on honesty, respect, and true love.